Thank you everybody for being here. This is actually my first talk in a kind of this AWS events, and today we'll be covering this new service, Amazon Security Lake. I work as a consultant in Know It Solutions, and yeah, very shortly about me first. I'm from Estonia originally, but live here in Finland for like a few years now. I'm specializing, like, let's say, more cloud and also AI, because that's my background more. Mostly worked previously in AI startups in Estonia and then in Finland. And from the AWS side, I started with the machine learning. That was 3 years ago. I did the exam and then continued to the more solutions architect, kind of AI ML ops. So that's my background, but now let's get straight into the subject. Let's start with the challenges in the security industry today. So we have exponentially growing cybercrime rates. According to the Forbes study, in the next 2 years, we have a increased cost of around $2.5 billion. So that's a pretty massive number. And to counter all this growing cybercrime, we have rapidly growing amounts of security log data from the vendors, because all the vendors, well, they want to contribute to actually predicting the crime before it gets to the actual impact. Problem with all this data that's emitted is that it's often inconsistent and incomplete. So there's different standards, different data formats, and they're not really compatible with each other. And that makes the security engineers' work really difficult and also unproductive. So basically, on top of that, it's that the data in this security lake, let's call it the data lake for security, is also not always owned by the consumer. So the customer, if you have a third-party provider analyzing it, then it's not really you that own it, but that would like to be the case. And then you might ask, okay, these are different challenges, but why are you talking about the security lake? So we think about, okay, so it's about data, but why you need the data? So if you want to do threat detection, let's say using some advanced techniques, you would need quality data sets, but there's a problem that this data set is not really that available. There are some, and probably some of you know, but it's not that widespread. So to counter all these problems, we have this new service on the Amazon Security Lake, sorry. And it's basically AWS managed service. It's built on this open cybersecurity schema framework. That's a new framework that came out last year. And this is actually a very big importance here of the core of the service, because you can ingest the logs from almost any kind of source. Well, AWS source can be on-premise source, can be like another cloud provider, and then just it will normalize it into the same schema, same format, and emit also messages in that format. So that means that if you, for example, want to build your own application, you can do it by making it OCSF compatible. So you can do that, and a very nice thing, it's not really, you don't need to tweak anything. Amazon is managing all this process for you, and it's compatible with over 50 different providers. And so, just feel free to explore it. So that's the security lake. And now very quickly about features that you would get. So I mentioned the hybrid cloud aspect. Then the actual data, so the data lake, it's data stored in S3. That means you can use all the data lifecycle policies and retain it as long as you want or decommission it. So you don't need to wrangle the data yourself. It's normalized for the same schema. It's in Parquet format records, but OCSF like standard. So and in addition, you basically have all the third-party data integrations and everything you would need. But while taking into additional features, which is that it's compatible with the CM tools, all kind of tools. It has support thanks to this OCSF standard being open source. It has both the proprietary with cloud provider like AWS, but you can get support from the open source community, which is really nice. And well, you can store the data in close to where it's actually generated, and then have an aggregate region where you can actually see all the logs. So you can have actually global access. I think currently was it like 7 or 10 regions or something like that. So it's really going quite wide. So Okay, but now very logical question. You know that there's the all-around security service already, Security Hub. So why would you use Security Lake and when would you use Security Hub? So I think I just made a quick table to show the main differences. So the Security Hub then is focused on the scoring of the current state of security in the AWS organization. It's like, that's the thing it does. It has the dashboard. You can have everything. You can see and how it is now. But I think different Security Lake, it doesn't have this dashboard. It's focused on storing data, but then centralize, optimize, normalize, and analyze. So it is plainly data-focused service. Okay, that's a big difference. They're compatible both with the third-party service provider. Yes, because there's integrations with all kind of providers, and that's the common thing. But Security Lake, then you can have the open source support, as I mentioned. Maybe another thing to point out, time bound. So Security Hub, so for example, talking about Security Hub findings, it should have like a 90-day time limit. So after 90 days, you don't know anything anymore. So that means, for example, cannot by itself use it for like custom comparisons in the dashboard that go over very back in time. But Security Lake, there's no dashboarding. You can have any retention policies. So yeah, that's how you do. And it is meant for storing the raw data. It's not like Security Hub in that sense. Okay, but maybe something I will show today quickly is like Security Hub. It's in a way deterministic service. It works on vulnerability detection, and these probably mostly known beforehand. Security Lake, and theoretically, and probably also in actual cases, can help you with also like kind of novel type of threat detection. So we'll see it a bit later. Okay, so now a little bit about the process that we did in Knowit. We were doing some testing of the Security Lake, so I can just summarize some features and what we found out. So overall, I would say very nice service. It does what it promises, and there's not really much for you that is meant to be tweaked because it's managed by AWS. We tested integrity, reliability, robustness. So now come some points with any previous service. You might say this, okay, that's a previous service, so it means that some things can be improved, like, obviously Terraform support is in progress. So then to just, tackle this reliability of accounts and regions crawling. So, you can launch the lake in 2 minutes. You're crawling the data from all over the world from your AWS accounts, but then you want like this to be reliable. Then, for example, if you update the settings in the Security Lake, would like to see really like very informative messages. So that's another thing. But now, if you really think out of the box, what I would like to, for example, see is that we have these third-party integrations for subscribers, and there's all kind of tools and offerings. But usually, you would need to pay like starting from different kind of budgets, but wouldn't it be nice to have actually free library of these tools to show you like how in real life cases to use the Security Lake. So that would be really cool. So now, since we have some time still, I would like to show a quick proposal for how we could use the data from the Security Lake and build like a custom like threat detection solution. Okay, so it will be, I won't have a lot of time to explain all the nuances, but I hope you get some idea. So let's imagine a problem where you have a Security Lake deployed and you have some data there. And especially we would be interested in, for example, VPC flow logs, for example. And then we have some knowledge of attack types. So there are some data sets that cover those, and obviously you can know yourself. Then there's this open source software called CSC Flow Meter. It can be used to generate all kind of network and security related data. And assume that we have, let's say, it could be an EC2 instance where we can put the software to run. And then we have some questions we'd like to know. So given all this we have, what actually are the cyber attack types that the organization or the accounts could be most vulnerable to? And well, obviously, like if you could know, is any of the accounts now under attack, given that what we know? So attacks could be, for example, those. So we have web application attacks, all kind of attacks. Like if you attended the talk today earlier, we saw all kind of ways you can actually break into the system, including DDoS and, well, there's for sure more that's here. But interesting point here, we added also this, that what if it's actually not really like known attack, and we don't want to say it's unknown, but kind of learn that what if it's a novel attack, and can we actually find that also? So this is one way we could kind of approach it. Let's assume that we can get data and we can train, like, AI model, machine learning model on it. So there are some data sets, for example, CIC IDS 2018, where there were 50 machines attacking 400 machines and 30 servers and something like that. And that's a good thing, it's annotated, so we can leverage this to actually make our data very informative. Then, if you're a security guy, you might know there's this honeypot servers that we can put to run on the somewhere on the internet, and just that it would only then ideally collect the bad traffic. So if we can do that, of course, it would require a bit of labeling, but let's assume we can do that optionally. But this is like the base. And then, of course, you can use Security Lake, like whatever it gives you. There's VBC flow logs, Security Hub findings, CloudTrail. You can use custom application logs, which I didn't mention, but the very important thing, it can also help to detect application security issues. So, and let's say that we then all join this data into this Security Lake on S3. Now we say that we have, well, a significant amount of relevant data, and then it's pretty much like ready. So then in the training phase, we would like to augment it even more by generating some statistically relevant features for actually detecting the right types of attacks. And then we could convert all this augmented data set to actual image format, because we'd like to train a generative adversarial network, which is a type of generative AI model that can help you to both generate new data and also make predictions based on the existing data. So that's like the training side. And then now this is then the use case scenario. We have now inference time. So let's say that there's a request made to AWS services. That means that we have data coming into Security Lake relevant to that. Plus, we have the routing of the traffic through that same VM that we mentioned that we established. That VM is the one running the CIC flow meter. And the good thing is, because this CIC data set, it was actually generated while using the CIC flow meter tool. So in an inference time, we can also use that to generate the same features, because we send the traffic through that machine running that software. So then we will pretty much have the same data set. At least it needs to be pretty much identical formats. And then we send it to image converter. And then basically, since we can now make, we have deployed this application afterwards, but after we have deployed it, we can then make the predictions. Okay, this traffic, is it actually really bad? Is it some kind of botnet attack? Is it backdoor attack? What kind of attack it could be, or is actually not relevant for us, which would be very much of interest. And then of course feed that feedback back to the security team. So that's one way I think it could be done. And to end up, that was the use case. But if you really want to use, let's say, third-party integrators, you can do that. There's many options, and there's some very different experiences. I just showed the UI, how it could differ. There's big ones like Cisco and Splunk and so on, but also Datadog, and so there's a lot of options. And I think that's pretty much it. The references I'd recommend, we have written a blog post about this, like what it is, but it covers pretty much the same content, and for this documentation. And that's it for now. So thank you.